literally only 4 or 5 narrated the bulk of the traditions. The bulk of our religion really is preserved by less than maybe 15 Sahaba. 90 to 95% of the Sahaba, they are really not known to us. We don't even know maybe even their names.
Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Kai, and in this installment of the Hadith Holes series, we look at the massive problems Muslims have with the supposed mass transmission of hadiths. For the most part, Islamic scholars use the term hadith to refer to the supposed sunnah of Muhammad, which is believed to be his actions and sayings as recorded in the Quran and elsewhere. This so-called sunnah occupies a prominent place in Islam because Muslims rely on it as a primary source for Islamic law. From Islamic scholar Bilal Phillips, quote, "The term hadith has become a synonym for the term sunnah, though there is some difference in their meaning. Sunnah, according to Arabic lexicographers, means a way, course, rule, manner of acting or conduct of life. Sunnah, as a technical term in the science of hadith, refers to whatever statements, acts, approvals, physical or character descriptions that are attributable to the Prophet along with his biography before or after the beginning of his prophethood. It is thus synonymous with the term hadith. However, according to usul al-fiqh science, or legal methodology, sunnah refers to only the statements, acts, and approvals of the Prophet. It also refers to whatever is supported by evidence from the Sharia, the opposite of bid'ah. And in the legalistic science of fiqh, the term sunnah refers to recommended acts authentically attributable to the Prophet, the dues of which is rewarded and the non-doer is not punished. It is also used to refer to the opposite of bid'ah, as in the statement, sunnah divorce and bid'ah divorce. According to its general definition, the Quran is the most important part of the sunnah conveyed by the Prophet. It may also be said that the hadiths were the containers in which the sunnah of the Prophet was conveyed during his lifetime and after his death." End quote. Some hadiths are considered by Muslims to be widely transmitted or recurrent and are classified as tawatur or mutawatir in Arabic. These hadiths are characterized by the following. They are believed to be narrated by such a large number of people at each link in the chain of narration that it is inconceivable for everyone to have collaborated or colluded in order to perpetuate a lie, especially given the diversity in residences, localities, and time. The personal qualities of narrators are not required. You can have children and non-Muslims be part of the narration because credibility is given by the multitude of narrators. Example, an entire town reporting that there was a fire. Known biases of narrators like political or sectarian alignments disqualify mutawatir. There is no specified minimum number of narrators for each link to be considered mutawatir, although 4 is often taken as the minimum. The number of narrators must remain large, preferred view is 10, from beginning to end. A link in the chain of narration can increase the number of narrators, but cannot have a reduction in the number of narrators. Mutawatir hadiths convey certainty. They cannot be rejected, challenged, or doubted. Rulings established using mutawatir hadiths are decisive with respect to proof. They are placed on the same level as the Quran in authority. There are mutawatir lafzi, or verbal mutawatir, meaning a verbatim report from Muhammad. Very few of these exist, approximately 10. Then there are mutawatir manawi, or meaning, basically conveying the general idea of the hadith without it being a verbatim report. Most mutawatir hadiths are of this latter type. Now, how many mutawatir hadiths are there? Recall the Sunni corpus of hadith literature comprising Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawood, Tirmidhi, Nasai, Ibn Majah, and many others. Thousands upon thousands of hadiths. But how many are mutawatir? Approximately 322. That's right. Just only over 300 hadiths in the entire Sunni corpus are considered to be mutawatir. The traditional sources consulted by Muslims for mutawatir hadiths are works like Al-Fawaid al-Mutakathira by Suyuti and An-Nazm al-Mutanathir by Al-Qatani, among others, the former of which contains only about 100 such hadiths, while the latter about 300. Whatever the actual count is, it is a far, far cry from the thousands upon thousands of hadiths in the Sunni corpus. In this slide, I provide you the link of all the mutawatir hadiths compiled by the Ministry of Islamic Affairs, Endowments, Dawah and Guidance in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Just take a moment to process this bit of information. Of all the thousands upon thousands of hadiths recorded in the Sunni corpus, the great scholars of Islam classify only about 300 hadiths as being mass transmitted, or mutawatir. So then, if a hadith is not classified as mutawatir, then what is it classified as? Ahad, or solitary. Basically, an ahad or solitary hadith has the following characteristics. It is not mutawatir. Every link in the chain of narration consists of 1 to 3 narrators. In principle, ahad hadiths can be rejected, challenged, and doubted, which is not possible with mutawatir hadiths. Multiple ahad hadiths can be taken together to produce mutawatir. Now this last point is very interesting and raises an objection. If you consider an ahad hadith, which by definition is not mutawatir, and it can be doubted on whatever grounds, then it does not logically follow how taking it together with other ahad hadiths, thereby making the collective mutawatir or some pseudo-mutawatir, now staves off criticisms. Basically, it does not logically follow why the whole can be treated differently from its constituent parts. For example, news can be mutawatir overnight either through collective narration or multiple ahad narrations taken together. However, that does not mean that the news cannot be doubted, i.e., think fake news. Just because something satisfies mutawatir, it does not logically follow that it cannot be doubted. So mutawatir is meaningless if the source itself is erroneous. In other words, it does not logically follow that taking multiple ahad or solitary hadiths together produces the truth. Mutawatir hadiths also have a very interesting relationship with Islamic law. Consider, for example, what the well-respected Islamic scholar Muhammad Saeed Bhuti says. Quote, "A second aspect is the consensus of scholars that the companions, or Sahaba of the Prophet, Allah bless him and give him peace, were at various levels of knowledge in religion. Not all of them were capable of giving formal legal opinion, fatwa, as Ibn Khaldun has noted, nor was the religion taken from all of them. Rather, there were those of them capable of legal opinion and ijtihad, and these were a small minority in relation to the rest. And there were those of them who sought legal opinion and followed others therein, and these were the vast majority of them." Suyuti in Tadrib Rawi quotes Ibn Hazm's report that most of the companions' legal opinions came from only 7 of them: Umar, Ali, Ibn Masud, Ibn Umar, Ibn Abbas, Zayd ibn Thabit, and Aisha. And this was from thousands of the companions. Nor did the individual companion giving a legal opinion necessarily mention the evidence for it to the person who had asked about it. Al-Amadi notes in his book Al-Ihkam, "The learned among them would unhesitatingly answer their questions without alluding to mention of evidence. No one censured them for doing this, a fact that establishes scholarly consensus on the absolute permissibility of the ordinary person following one capable of ijtihad." End quote. In other words, Islamic law, which relies on hadiths as a primary source after the Quran, was concentrated in only a handful of Sahaba, and the overwhelming majority of Sahaba did not know hadiths and or did not know how to apply hadiths to formulate Islamic law. So what we have are the following. Most hadiths are not mass transmitted. The bulk of the religion of Islam is taken from 15 Sahaba, and legal rulings, without evidence, were concentrated in 7 Sahaba. This has serious epistemic implications, namely, the majority of Islamic law is not based on mass transmission of Muhammad's Sunnah. Islam is susceptible to corruption and manipulation. For example, the Sunni versus Shia divide, wherein each side rejects the hadiths of the other. And preservation does not ensure correctness if everyone is drawing from the same erroneous source. I began this presentation with Yasser Qadhi saying some startling things about the preservation of Islam. Here's an extended clip of him giving fuller context to mutawatir hadiths in Islam.
Perhaps the most comprehensive book written to chronicle the names and biographies of the Sahaba, is the famous book Al-Isaba fi Tamyiz al-Sahaba by none other than Ibn Hajar, the famous Ibn Hajar. Al-Isaba fi Tamyiz al-Sahaba. And this was, by the way, one of my main sources for the seerah, by the way. Every seerah class, I would always look up Al-Isaba, every Sahabi, and I would see any stories from there that I could put into the seerah. So Al-Isaba is the most one of the most famous books of the names of the narrators the names of the Sahaba. And in that book, we barely have 4,000 to 5,000 names of the Sahaba. And even these names, sometimes it's not even a name. It's like the one who was sent to this tribe. Maybe it's mentioned in a story, the Prophet ﷺ sent somebody, or this happened, or that happened. So it's not even the full name. Or it's just a kunya, Abu so-and-so, and we don't know anything else about him. So the bulk of this book really just has a name and maybe even one line. Not even more than that. Therefore, the number of Sahaba who actually narrated from the Prophet ﷺ a hadith, so we're getting smaller and smaller. Imam Al-Hakim Mustadrak, the author of Mustadrak, he said around 4,000 Sahaba narrated from him. But the famous scholar Imam Al-Dhahabi, the student of Ibn Taymiyyah, Imam Al-Dhahabi said, no, this cannot be correct. Perhaps 2,000 or maybe even 1,500 narrated from him. Ibn Kathir, the famous Ibn Kathir that all of us know, he said that the most comprehensive book of hadith is by Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. I mentioned it last 2 classes ago, the Musnad of Imam Ahmad. And despite the fact that Imam Ahmad is the most authoritative scholar of his time, and he has the rank that he does, he has traveled so much, despite all of this, he has narrated from only 978 companions. And if you go look up other books beyond this, you will not find more than 200-300 other names. So the grand total is around 1,200 who narrated from him. And of those this is not Ibn Kathir. Of those 1,200, literally only 4 or 5 narrated the bulk of the traditions. Like only 4 or 5 Sahaba were the ones who excelled in narrating like 5,000, 4,000, 3,000, not 5,000, 3,000, 4,000 hadith. Okay, Aisha and Jabir and Abu Huraira and Ibn Umar, Ibn Abbas, these were the ones who became like the lions of narrating the ahadith. The bulk of our religion really is preserved by less than maybe 15 Sahaba. Those are the ones who became proficient in narrating the ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the bottom line out of all of this, before we move on, is that perhaps 90 to 95% of the Sahaba, they are really not known to us. We don't even know maybe even their names. The example of the Bedouin who urinated in the masjid is just one example. Imagine for that one Bedouin that urinated, how many tens of thousands would have crossed into Medina who have not done anything of that nature. We don't even know their names. Not even their tribes, nothing is known. Just rough estimates. And because they didn't narrate anything, so we have no knowledge of them whatsoever, and only a very small percentage of the Sahaba are the ones whose names that we know, and an even smaller percentage are the ones who excelled in narrating the traditions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
The following is a brief summary of the episode's progress thus far in the Hadith Holes series. In the episode, Main Reason Muslim is Inferior to Bukhari, we showed that it is not necessary to establish that hadith narrators actually met. In the episode, No Eyewitness Testimony Exists, we showed that no hadith manuscripts exist during the lifetime of Muhammad. In this episode, Massive Problems with Mass Transmission, we showed that the overwhelming majority of hadiths are not mass transmitted. Stay tuned for the next episode as we continue to examine Muslim epistemology and normative authority.